Hello there, and welcome back. Since James Rolfe from Cinemassacre did a list of popular movies that he didn't love, and I actually love that video by the way, I decided that it would be a great idea for me to make a list of popular games that I don't love. I myself am always trying to find quality games, but there are some games that I don't get the appeal. In fact, I might try to take a look at it and try to figure out why it's so popular. Now keep in mind, these games aren't in any specific order, it's just how popular the game is versus what I think about it. In fact, I would love to see someone hate on the Mario games because it's refreshing to hear an opinion that's different from everybody else. However, I do have to say that you're not a true gamer until you have owned a copy of a Mario game and a Nintendo console. Here's a list of popular games that I just don't get. Alright, let's start the countdown. Number 12, Project Cars. Unlike all the other games on this list, I actually do get why Project Cars is so popular and well known. Now, to be fair, I don't actually like racing games that are too realistic. If it's too realistic, like, what's the point? You might as well go for a drive in real life. In fact, Kaz said that racing sims shouldn't be too hard. However, there are people who love playing racing games that are too realistic. They actually want to see what driving a car would be like in real life, which is why Project Cars is so popular and well known. Personally, I like Gran Turismo a lot better, but that's just my opinion though. Moving on. Number 11, the Double Dragon games. Double Dragon sure gets mentioned a lot, doesn't it? Here's what I think about the Double Dragon games. They are not the best beat-em-up games, nor the best games out there. In fact, I always deemed Golden Axe to be far superior to Double Dragon, seeing how Golden Axe takes place in a fantasy world and the main villain of the game is named Death Adder. Not to mention, you can freaking ride on creatures in Golden Axe, whereas Double Dragon has nothing like that. However, I do have to say that Golden Axe is pretty difficult. You'll be lucky if you ever made it to Death Adder. Let's see what's next on the agenda. Number 10, Ghouls and Ghosts. Ghouls and Ghosts, aka Ghosts and Goblins on the Nintendo Entertainment System, isn't technically a bad game. It's a good game, but the only problems I have with it are some of the useless weapons, like the flame for example, the squealing ghosts that look like pigs in a blanket, and the difficulty. Challenge is one thing, but if you beat Ghouls and Ghosts, you have to beat the entire game again. You should not be able to beat the game twice, and even the ending isn't worth all the trouble. Well, at least it isn't as hard as The Adventures of Bayou Billy. But still, I see Ghouls and Ghosts get mentioned a lot. There's a ton of people out there that love the series to death. You'd think I would love it because of the spooky theme, but I don't. In my opinion, Medieval is a much better spooky game than Ghouls and Ghosts. I would love to get a copy of Medieval on the PlayStation. I haven't played the game yet, but I've seen videos for the game, and I actually love the art style of the game. It's heavily influenced by The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, and the main character is a skeleton knight! Now, if you ask me, that's pretty darn cool, and it's also what I call creative. On to the next game. Number 9, Shantae. I never understood why this game got so darn popular. Just like Ghouls and Ghosts, Shantae also gets outplaced by a far superior game, and in this case, The Great Gianna Sisters. The Great Gianna Sisters is a game that looked similar to Mario, and was released on the home computers in the 80s like the Commodore 64 and Amiga, just to name two. Unlike Mario, Gianna Sisters had a female character as the main character instead of an Italian plumber. In fact, it looked so similar to Mario that the company who made it, named Rainbow Arts, eventually got sued by Nintendo themselves. No joke! Another Gianna Sisters game would not appear until 2009, and it was released on Nintendo DS. I would love to get myself a copy of Gianna Sisters DS, and I would love to see Gianna herself make an appearance in the Mario universe. Imagine seeing Gianna teaming up with the Mario princesses. Oh, and I always thought Gianna was a much better character than Shantae. She's a lot cuter and she's an overall more appealing character, in my opinion. I would rather play Gianna Sisters DS any day over Shantae. Not to mention, Gianna Sisters DS also has a soundtrack composed by the legendary Chris Hallsbeck, whereas Shantae does not. He also composed music for the Turrican games, which are also great games that never get mentioned that much, which is a shame, really. Next game, please. Number 8, the Mega Man games. More games on this list made by Capcom. The Mega Man games are also a series of good games, but what prevents me from loving the series is the fact the games are too mainstream for me. Seriously, I see a lot of people talk about the Mega Man games. There's a lot of Mega Man merchandise out there, and there's way too many Mega Man fan art to count. There's not much I could say about these games, but the Mega Man games are examples of good games that have gone way too far. Alright, let's see what's next. Number 7, Bayonetta II. On this list, with a female character as the main hero. Bayonetta 2 is the sequel to Bayonetta, and it was released on Nintendo Wii U. There's countless people that love the game, and I even see a lot of Bayonetta fan art. However, I think it's an overrated game. The main character, Bayonetta, is supposed to be a witch. And yes, I'm using witch in quotations because Bayonetta is not what I consider to be a witch. Bayonetta is not a witch, and she is an over-sexualized mess of a character. I think Ashley from the WarioWare series is a much better character, and she looks to be what I consider a witch. She doesn't wear an outfit that looks ridiculous, and she's cute. Not to mention, she's the only video game character that I know of that would fit right in there with Morticia Addams, Lily Munster, and Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Seriously. Ashley should definitely get her own spin-off game, just like how Captain Toad got his own game. Bayonetta 2 is a game that should not have gotten the Nintendo seal of approval, seeing how Bayonetta herself is not suitable to be a Nintendo girl. Let's see what's next. Number 6, the Grand Theft Auto games. Torches and pitchforks away from me, because I think the Grand Theft Auto series of games are actually good. They're good games, but there's one problem though. a lot of people look at it like it's the only sandbox game out there, which it isn't. There's a ton of other sandbox games out there like Saints Row, The Getaway, Lego City Undercover, and plenty more. The Grand Theft Auto games are good, but they are not the only sandbox games out there. Let's see what we have next. Number 5. The Fire Emblem games. I never understood why this franchise is so popular. Personally, I thought Golden Sun is the superior game, and that game came out 2 years before Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance would be released in North America, or released at all. Even Advance Wars, which was also made by Intelligent Systems, is also superior to Fire Emblem, and that game also came out before Fire Emblem on the GBA did. Heck, even the WarioWare games made by Intelligent Systems are far superior to Fire Emblem. What happened? The Fire Emblem games are just another series of lackluster RPGs. Nothing special. But still, I see these games get mentioned a lot, and I even see a lot of Fire Emblem fan art. So why is it that a series of lackluster RPGs became so popular? I will never know. Even the female characters in the Golden Sun games are better than the ones in the Fire Emblem games. They are more well dressed. In fact, Jenna and Mia are more well dressed than Farja, since Farja's outfit looks friggin' ridiculous. And are examples of characters that can look good without having to show off too much. Oh, and I also thought Karis from Golden Sun Dark Dawn is a much better character than Lucina. What do you think? The Fire Emblem games are lackluster RPGs that should have been forgotten and only released in Japan. Let's see what we have next. Number 4. The Street Fighter games. This is the third time on this list I mentioned games made by Capcom. I used to like the Street Fighter games, but I have moved on, seeing how I'm not a big fan of these fighting games. Even I used to have Rose as my main waifu of choice, but I have since moved on to having Mona from the WarioWare series as my main waifu of choice. I'm glad I chose Mona because she's a much more appealing character than Rose in my opinion. Mona's cute, lovely, and she's just a great character with loads of personality. The Street Fighter games are way too darn popular. These games get mentioned a lot, and there's even countless Street Fighter merchandise and way too many Street Fighter fan arts. Heck, I even see some people going as far to say that Capcom is the king of fighting games. Really? You mean that Capcom makes the best fighting games ever made? What about Mortal Kombat? Mortal Kombat may be more challenging because of clunkier controls, but the special moves are more fun to pull off because they are simple to pull off, and they're like pulling off the beam attack in one of the micro games in the dribble and spit stage of WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, also known as WarioWare Inc. Mega Party Games on the GameCube. Well, it's a different version, but it has the same micro games, and that's why I consider it to be the same game. It's just that it has some unique features that aren't present in WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games. The fatalities are also fairly easy to pull off. Well, that is if you can figure out how to pull them off. And are actually fun to watch. Yes, they are bloody, gory, and violent, but are still fun to watch nonetheless. And Mortal Kombat has a story! A good story, in fact. Well, many fighting games try to put in a story, but it usually doesn't work that well. Yeah, this is one of the instances in the Street Fighter games. You'd think that the story in the Street Fighter games would be like as simple as pouring milk into a bowl of cereal. But nope. Capcom has always tried to find ways to mess up the story involving fake deaths and other things. So the story of the Street Fighter games is a complete mess. Mortal Kombat is set in a fantasy world of 6 different realms. Well, there's a 7th realm, but they don't tell you about that though. And there's a lot of stuff to get invested into. I recommend going on the Mortal Kombat wiki to see the full storyline of Mortal Kombat, since there's obviously a lot of stuff to talk about. Oh, and the characters in Mortal Kombat are also much better. Mortal Kombat has a variety of characters that are awesome. Well, except for some of the worst characters in the Mortal Kombat games, like Mocap, for example. Seriously, why did they put, like, a guy in a motion capture suit in a fighting game? I still can't get over that. In fact, I always thought Sonya Blade is a better character than Cammy White, in my opinion. Sonya is what Cammy would be like if she was appropriately dressed and not dubbed as a secret agent Barbie. But she's still a warrior queen, though. Let me explain something here, guys. Warrior queen is a terminology that I came up with to describe most female characters in fighting games. You see, the defining characteristics of warrior queens include they wear scantily clad outfits, sometimes with a visible midsection. They have thin, curvaceous figures, like if they were over-sexualized Barbie dolls or Pamela friggin' Anderson. And I'll explain about one of Sonya's outfits in a moment. And feminists usually complain about them. Well, real feminists don't get worked up over fictional characters. Yeah. In the first Mortal Kombat game, Sonya Blade has an outfit that looks like something that an aerobics instructor from the 80s would wear, except that Mortal Kombat was made in the 90s. Well, I can't complain too much since, well, it's a realistic human figure, because digitized actors. However, she did get more, well, as we say, well dressed in later Mortal Kombat games. But that's still not saying much, though. Still a warrior queen. In the Mortal Kombat games for PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and Wii, including Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Sonya Blade wears a shirt with visible breasts. And no, I'm not a big fan of breasts being shown like that unless if it's Captain Syrup and WarioWare and Mona from the WarioWare games. Yeah, she also wears a jacket, black gloves like Kelly from R.A.D. in order to give off a tough girl vibe to her, and pants with a strap thing on the bottom that looks like a thong. You see, I don't have a problem with female characters in video games. In fact, there's nothing wrong with the Mario Princesses. The Mario Princesses are characters that that don't wear outfits that look too ridiculous and actually appeal to the little girls. They look good without having to show off too much. Same can be said for the WarioWare girls as well. And of course, their outfits are pretty normal in comparison to what the warrior queens wear. Yeah. Yeah, I came up with that terminology, and I think it's a pretty good terminology. It's just like how we called most big American full-size sedans, at least the ones that were rear-wheel drive back in the day, land yachts. Yeah. So, that's what I think about Sonya Blade. However, she did get more well-dressed in Mortal Kombat 9, but she still has flaws with her outfit, though. Like, again, visible breasts. She has visible cleavage. However, in Mortal Kombat X, or Mortal Kombat 10, she wears a more appropriate-looking outfit, and is what I consider to be well-dressed. I think Sonya's outfit for Mortal Kombat X is by far the most well-dressed Sonya Blade. And unlike many other warrior queens, doesn't go overboard with the physique and the figure. Alright. The Mortal Kombat games, baby. Well, I started to love Mortal Kombat, and I'm proud of it. These games may be gory and violent, but they are fun to play. Personally, I think that Street Fighter shouldn't even be considered the king of fighting games, since it isn't the best fighting game out there. Not to mention, Capcom also has trouble releasing these games, since they release another version of the same game. There's countless versions of Street Fighter 2, and God knows how many versions of Street Fighter 3 there is. Nobody wants to buy the same game multiple times. Yes, there's Mortal Kombat Complete Edition and Mortal Kombat XL, but those games have all the extra content if you already didn't get them. You see, this is why Midway and later NetherRealm Studios doesn't release Super Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Mortal Kombat. Well, they have released Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, aka Ultimate Mortal Kombat, but that's basically just an improved Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Champion, Combatant Edition, Mortal Kombat 3 Turbo, and Super Mortal Kombat 3 Turbo, because releasing multiple versions of the same game is stupid. You might as well call Capcom Crapcom. Now you see why I have a personal disdain towards Capcom. Midway is a much better game company anyways. Alright, let's move on to the next game. Number 3, Overwatch. Yes, you may love Overwatch, and that's okay, but I always thought Overwatch is nothing more than a Team Fortress 2 ripoff. Even at $60, I still feel ripped off. Not to mention, Team Fortress 2 is free to play nowadays. And you'll find more enjoyment out of it. The reason why this game isn't number 1 on this list is because I don't want to piss any Overwatch fans off. I just reached level 48 in Team Fortress 2, and God knows how many hours I put into that game. Team Fortress 2 also has better characters. There are no characters in Team Fortress 2 that look like over-sexualized Barbies that show off too much. But that's not to say that Team Fortress 2 still has female characters though. Take Miss Pauling for example. And I do love Miss Pauling, by the way. However, the female characters in Team Fortress 2 are not playable since Team Fortress 2 is a manly game and is all about the masculinity. Even the company in this game is called Manco. I'm not a huge fan of female characters in video games that wear ridiculous and scantily clad outfits. I don't have a problem with the body types, it's just the outfits I have a problem with. I want female characters in video games to look good, but wear normal outfits and or outfits that aren't too revealing, like Mona from the WarioWare series. The only people who still play Overwatch are fans of the game, obviously, and people who couldn't even let go of their waifu of choice. The next one is going to be painful, so you'd better be ready. Number 2, any RPG made by Square. Good gravel, where do I begin? Final Fantasy has been very popular, but it wasn't even that good to begin with. The first Final Fantasy game on the Nintendo Entertainment System had quite possibly one of the most broken combat systems I've ever seen in any RPG. The way it works is that you can get most of your party members to attack one enemy, but this just raises too many questions. What are they attacking at? The wind? The wind? Why can't they attack the next monster in line like in any other RPG out there? And, while we're at it, is this supposed to be fun and challenging? Final Fantasy on the NES has no challenge whatsoever. And challenge is what makes the game more fun. Seriously, I've seen special machine races in Ridge Racer Type 4 that are harder than Final Fantasy on the NES. Final Fantasy VII isn't a bad game, it just hasn't aged well and stood the test of time. Back then, it was awesome, but it has aged just about as well as a 20-year-old Ford Taurus. Well, you might say you can't complain about the graphics because it was made in 1997, but actually I can. Here's Quake. Are you listening? It was released a year before Final Fantasy VII, and while the character models looked blocky, they were still lifelike for the time. Here's GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. It had better looking character models thanks to the power of the Nintendo 64, and was released the same year as Final Fantasy VII. Here's Final Fantasy VII. What the hell is up with the huge arms? Oh, and it's not just Cloud Strife either. All of the character models in this game have this whole Popeye the Sailor Man physique going on. I never knew what was up with the whole Popeye the Sailor Man physique, but I always found it to be funny. Oh, and if you're complaining about the PS1 for its 32-bit limitations, take a look at Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider for the PS1 was also released a year before Final Fantasy VII, and also had far better looking character models. Even the 2D Final Fantasy games did better, and those didn't age well either. Thankfully, Final Fantasy VIII would switch to a more realistic style, but that game was just about as bad, if not worse. I don't know about you, but I could never stand Final Fantasy VIII. Even though it had a more realistic art style, it still had a lot of nonsensical things, like the Gunblade, for example. While I had a problem with the Buster Swords, especially the one that Cloud Strife has, because it weighed more than he did, the Buster Swords still make more sense than the Gunblade. Not only Not only does the gunblade look stupid, it also doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, where does it shoot? Not to mention, there's a paper full of notes of things wrong with Final Fantasy VIII. I could go on for hours and explain why the game is bad. But the video would end up being too long. But still, there's a lot of things wrong with Final Fantasy VIII. Like the plot, the characters, and the freaking magic system, to name a few. Final Fantasy VIII was so bad that it made me stay away from Final Fantasy IX. Oh, and don't even get me started on Final Fantasy X. Ugh. I would cut off my own arm just to get myself a copy of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X2. Oh, and let's talk about Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger while we're at it. Secret of Mana is a game that's loved by many people, but it is riddled with flaws. There are many things wrong with Secret Mana, and it has a story that is just about as easy to follow as a Romanian soap opera with no subtitles. Seriously. The story of... Excuse me. Seriously, the story of Secret of Mana is hard to follow. Oh, and Chrono Trigger is also overrated. The final boss, named Lavos, looks like a big ugly turd. In fact, he kind of reminds me of those things seen in Jurassic Park The Chaos Continues for the Game Boy. Seriously, I've seen scarier shit come out of my ass. The final boss in Chrono Trigger should have been a big scary knight with a skull for a face, and his goal is to conquer the universe and end humanity as we know it. And he also rides a big scary creature. It would have been a lot better than an ugly looking thing. Chrono Trigger supposedly has 14 different endings, but the one I liked the best is the black screen scene before ripping the cartridge out of the SNES. But seriously though, 14 different endings? 1 or 2 endings in a video game is enough, but 14 endings is way too many. How does Final Fantasy have fans? And why is Square still making games? I will never know and understand. There's only one more game on this list, and you'll find out what it is. And the number one popular game that I don't love is... Unlike most other games on this list, I actually do like some of the Call of Duty games. In fact, the last good Call of Duty game is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. The series has went downhill after Modern Warfare 2 was released. However, what separates this game apart from other games on this list is the gap. There's a huge gap of people who like Call of Duty games and what I think about them. Oh, and there's also a fair amount of people who also hate Call of Duty games too. You might think it's the best, or you might think it's the worst. A lot of the newer Call of Duty games are just about a contest of whoever has the fastest weapon wins. There's no semblance of strategy or luck involved in the newer Call of Duty games. Even Team Fortress 2 at least has strategy, and usually there are things in TF2 that will make the game more fair and balanced. However, Activision is still making Call of Duty games. I think that Activision should stop making Call of Duty games because Call of Duty has run its course. They need to stop milking the hell out of the cash cow. It's just another example of corporate screwing around with things. Not to mention, another reason why I want to see Activision stop making Call of Duty games is so that the internet can shut up about them. Yeah, it's getting old. There are countless first-person shooter games out there that are better than Call of Duty, like the Battlefield games, for example. And those games are worth more for your time. Not to mention, Angry Joe called Battlefield Bad Company the best team-based first-person shooter game out there when it was released, and I think I kind of agree with me. Agree with him, but it's debatable though, since Team Fortress 2 is also good. Well, that's my list of popular games that I don't love. You may love these games, and that's fine with me because it's my opinion and we all have different opinions on things. I'll see ya in this year's Otaku Bandito Halloween video. And you're going to be surprised when you see it.